The hit to the head was just the beginning. They thought she'd break, but Amara rose in step by silent step. She made an entire system tremble, like the video subscribed to the channel, because some stories don't need you to shout. They just need you not to stay silent. The basketball came flying like a bullet and slammed straight into Amara Lewis's forehead. No warning, no apology, just a loud, dry thud in the middle of the school courtyard. Thud. She stumbled, her feet slipping on the concrete vision, darkening for a split second. One ear buzzed while the other caught it. Laughter, loud, unfiltered, ugly. Oops. Thought it was the hoop, not her head. A cocky voice rang out. Cole Patterson. Team, captain, blonde, rich, white, untouchable. His boys erupted behind him, clapping and howling like it was the best joke they'd heard all week. Amara didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't scream. She just stood back up slow and steady, wiping the blood from her temple with the sleeve of her brand new uniform. Then without a word, she picked up her backpack, crouched down, grabbed the ball, turned to face Cole and held his gaze. 3 full seconds. No fear, no rage, just pure unsettling. Calm, then she hurled the ball not at him, but straight at the backboard on the far end of the court. It slammed, bounced off with a sharp echo, and rolled across the floor. Silence. Not the kind of silence that asks questions, the kind that watches. Judging, waiting. Amara didn't give them a scene. She walked, head high, shoulders square back straight. The hallway swallowed her, her sneakers tapping sharp against the floor. Behind her, the whispers began. Who even is she? One girl hissed. Some new kid from Atlanta. Another replied. I heard she's a politician's niece, Marcus Lewis's family. Pfft. Big deal. Black or not, she's still just another quota kid. Amara heard every word. She didn't turn around, she didn't slow down. She'd heard it all before. She gripped her backpack tighter, exhaled slowly through her nose, and let the rhythm of her steps do the talking. Her first class came and went in a fog. The teacher gave her a half-hearted introduction. Class, this is Amara. She transferred from Atlanta. No one cared, no one looked up, no one offered a seat. She took the last one in the far corner, half shadow, full silent. She opened her worn leather notebook, pulled out a black pen, and wrote in perfect block letters. New school, same script, blood on day one, game on by break time. She'd already figured out the layout. Where to walk, where not to stop, who to avoid. But trouble doesn't wait, it walks right up. A tall guy in a varsity jacket brushed her shoulder hard, then dramatically pulled back with a smirk. Damn, sorry. Didn't see you in all that shadow laughter again. A pack this time. She stopped, slowly turned and stared straight at him. No comeback, no fists, just eyes sharp, glassy, and too calm. He looked away first. She didn't have to speak. Her silence said everything. Amara turned back around and kept walking, each step measured, each breath steady. That's the part they didn't get. That silence wasn't weakness, it was warning. Day 2 at West Hill High started with a note taped right onto Amara's locker. Thick black marker scrawled across crumpled paper. You don't belong here. Stop pretending you do. Beneath the message, a crude drawing of a head, exploding clear enough to be a threat. Amara didn't flinch, didn't rip it down. She just stared at it for 3 seconds, slid off her headphones, opened her locker, grabbed her books, and walked away like it was just another Tuesday. Around her eyes darted heads, turned whispers, spread like wildfire in dry grass. That's Cole's warning. She may be backed by some big-shot senator, but she really thinks that's gonna save her. And oh, trust me, this is just the beginning. The morning moved like wet cement. In English class, the teacher passed back their first writing assignments. Amara had turned hers in on time, typed neat, thoughtful, but what she got in return was a giant red F scribbled across the top of her paper. No feedback, no explanation. Just that letter screaming louder than any insult. She looked up. The teacher, a stern-looking blonde with ice in her eyes, avoided Amara's gaze completely. Amara said nothing, just nodded and added one more name to the list. At lunch, it escalated. The cafeteria buzzed like a stadium before a fight. Amara walked in with her tray, cutting a line straight through the middle, heads turned. Conversations paused, phones lifted. She reached her usual table in the far corner. But as she pulled out her chair, splat! A soggy sandwich smacked her right between the shoulder blades. Behind her, a speaker blasted a phone ringtone. Yo, y'all, hurry up! Live show starting! She turned slowly. A group across the room was in hysterics. Cole Drew Logan, One of them held up a phone still recording, another shouted, "Welcome to Season 2 of Confident Black Girl." Laughter exploded. Chairs scraped the floor as students leaned for a better view. Amara didn't speak, didn't snap. She picked up the sandwich from the floor, placed it neatly on her tray, walked over to the trash can and dumped the whole thing in. Then she sat down, calm-centered, as if lunch hadn't been weaponized against her, as if her shirt wasn't sticky with mayo. The way she sat there, unshaken, unbothered, unnerved them. The laughter died out faster than anyone expected. Even Cole looked unsure. No one had seen this reaction before, because it wasn't a reaction. It was a decision. Amara understood something most people missed. Bullies don't target weakness, they target unpredictability. And when your silence isn't surrender but strategy, the ones who think they're running the show start to feel the ground shift under their feet. She wasn't playing defense, not anymore. That afternoon, just as the final bell rang and the hallways began to clear out, Amara reached her locker and froze. The door had been pried open. Books torn apart, pages shredded, scattered across the floor like confetti after a war. And on the metal surface of the locker, someone had drawn, using white correction fluid, a grotesque cartoon of a curly-haired head exploding with one final message smeared beneath it. "Time's up, trash." Amara didn't gasp, didn't blink. But what caught her attention wasn't the vandalism. It was the silence. 3 students were standing nearby, clearly having seen everything. One white boy with floppy blonde hair adjusted his shoelaces like it suddenly required his full attention. A girl clutched her phone thumbs, moving fast, her eyes avoiding Amara's. Not one of them said a word. That's when she understood. At West Hill, bullies were the main act, but it was the audience's silence that kept the show alive. She knelt down. One by one, she gathered the ripped pages, stacked the torn notebooks. No shaking, no tears. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, like someone used to cleaning up after wreckage. Down the hallway, leaning casually against the wall, like a proud director, watching his finale, stood Cole Patterson, arms crossed, smirk in place. When Amara finally stood, she locked eyes with him. Still no expression. He responded with a lazy finger gun gesture. Bang, bang. Then turned and walked away, like the show was over and he'd already won. That night, in a modest little house on the edge of town, Amara sat at the kitchen table staring at a glitchy laptop screen, trying to rewrite the essay she'd gotten an F on that morning. Her forehead still throbbed from where the ball had hit. She hadn't told anyone how bad it hurt. The front door opened. Her aunt, her mother's older sister, walked in with a grocery bag in one hand and tension in her voice. "Your uncle's office called," she said flatly, dropping the bag on the counter. Marcus saw the cafeteria video. Amara didn't respond. "He wants to meet, says he can intervene, press legal team, school board, whatever it takes." Amara looked up. Her dark eyes were steady but tired. "I don't want his help." Her aunt furrowed her brow. "You know who he is? You know what he can do?" "Exactly," Amara said. "That's why I can't use him." She walked to the sink, poured herself a glass of water, then spoke again, quiet but firm. "If I let him step in, they'll all think I won because of him, not because of me." Her aunt exhaled sharply but said nothing. Because she knew Amara was right. She always had been. Amara went back to the table, opened a new blank Google Doc, placed her fingers on the keys and just stared. She didn't want anyone else to swing the sword for her. She would forge her own blade because this wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about taking the power back, and she could feel it. The game Cole was playing, it was getting bolder, dirtier. If she didn't move soon, this stage they all performed on would swallow her whole like it had done to so many others before her. The next morning, Amara arrived at school earlier than usual. The air was still thick with fog, the courtyard nearly empty except for the distant cawing of crows perched atop the maple trees behind the athletic field. She wasn't there to learn. She was there to observe, to study patterns, the flow of movement. Who walked with whom? Who watched? Who looked away? In just 3 days, they had tried to cast her as the target. Today, she decided to become the observer, and what she saw was clear. West Hill High was a machine, a precise, ruthless one, fueled not just by bullying, but by silence, fear, and reputation. Cole wasn't acting alone. He was the face, the symbol. But behind him were the real gears of power. Logan Drew and 2 teachers that everyone whispered about, but no one dared confront Coach Beck and Ms. Raymond. They didn't have to say anything. All they had to do was turn away at the right time, and suddenly the bullies had room to operate. Amara wrote it all down. Names, times, interactions, micro-reactions. She didn't write long sentences, just sharp bullet points, quick surgical. During break, she sat under a maple tree outside a laptop balanced on her knees. She opened an old anonymous school forum called West Hill. Unfiltered, a relic from a previous graduating class. The site was barely active, almost dead, but a few threads still worked. She created a new post. No names, no backstory, just a question. If you've ever been bullied at West Hill and never told anyone, would you be willing to share it here? Fully anonymous, I'll be the first one to listen. Then she closed the laptop. No expectations, no refreshing the page, just the quiet certainty that when one door opens, others eventually follow. That afternoon at lunch, the air felt different. No one threw anything. No shouts, no childish taunts. The noise of the cafeteria continued, but muted like the volume had been turned down. But it wasn't silence from rejection. It was silence born of curiosity. Amara glanced up across the cafeteria. Cole was watching her. And this time he didn't look so certain. He looked cautious. She smiled. Not a smirk, not a gloat, just a knowing smile. The kind that says, I see the board now, and I know your next move before you make it. She stood up and left her table. No one blocked her path. No laughter followed her steps. The hallway outside was sunlit, the tall windows casting golden bars of light across the floor. She walked through them like she belonged there, like the game no longer owned her. In the pocket of her hoodie, the small leather notebook pressed lightly against her chest, as if reminding her of everything she now understood. She knew the counterstrike had already begun, and none of them, not Cole, not the faculty, not the system, would see it coming until it was already too late. On the fifth day, Amara walked into class like she always did, but this time no one looked at her. No stares, no whispers, no side glances or snickers, just silence, not the respectful kind. The kind that's cold calculated, like everyone had silently agreed to pretend she didn't exist. She sat at her desk, her math test was returned, A+, top of the class, but no one reacted. A few students glanced at her paper, then quickly turned away, like they'd accidentally touched something dirty. When she raised her hand to ask a question, the teacher didn't even look up. It's in the book, she muttered. Amara didn't get angry. She noted it down. This wasn't casual cruelty anymore. This was organized. In gym class. It got worse. When the teacher split the class into teams for soccer, Amara was left till the very end. No one picked her. One girl even said loud enough for everyone to hear, "She doesn't play with us, she doesn't fit in." Coach Raymond just crossed her arms and watched. No reprimand, no reaction. Amara stood alone on the edge of the field while the game went on, her shadow long against the artificial turf. But the part that stung the most wasn't the kids who ignored her, it was Jenna, the only student who had smiled at her on her first day. That soft, shy, hopeful smile. Today, when their eyes met, Jenna looked away fast. Didn't wave, didn't smile, just vanished behind a wall of silence. And Amara got it. She really did, because she had done the same thing once back at her old school. She had seen a kid pushed down in the hallway and hadn't said a word. Just watched, walked on. Afraid of being next, that fear was familiar, so no. She didn't hate Jenna for turning away. She understood her deeply. That afternoon, Amara sat in the library alone. Headphones off, laptop open. Her eyes weren't on her homework, but on the forum thread she had posted 2 days earlier. West Hill Unfiltered, 7 replies now. No names, no profile pictures, just raw truth, 10th grade. They pressured me for private photos. Nobody believed me. Coach made a late brown girl joke in front of the class. Everyone laughed, I didn't. They jumped me in the hallway. It's on video, but the school said I provoked it. Amara read them all, slowly, carefully. She didn't save the post, didn't take screenshots, but each one etched itself into her mind like a scar she didn't want to heal. She closed the laptop gently. Outside the window, the late afternoon sun painted long golden streaks across the lawn. For the first time since she'd set foot at West Hill, Amara felt something shift inside her. A thought soft but powerful. I'm not the only one. It's not just me, and that more than anything, more than grades, more than rules, more than any apology, was the first step toward dismantling the machine. Realizing the pain wasn't hers alone, that she wasn't fighting a personal war, she was part of something much, much bigger in that truth. It would be the crack that made everything else collapse. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. The messages from the forum looped in her mind like a soundtrack. slow haunting, heavy with truth. She stared at the ceiling for a long while. Then without hesitation, she got up, opened her laptop, incognito mode. No real account, no traceable login. She returned to West Hill, unfiltered, and this time she didn't just read. She posted. Not a story, a strategy, a proposition. If you've ever been bullied at West Hill, and you have proof texts, photos, recordings, notes, anything, send it here fully. Anonymous. Your name will never be mentioned, but your story will be told. Beneath it, she dropped a secure, encrypted link to a cloud folder she had set up under a randomized name. No one would know who submitted what, but all of it would come to her, and that night she fell asleep, deep dreamless. The next morning, while West Hill's hallways hummed with their usual rituals, bell rings, locker slams, half-shouted greetings, Amara walked those same halls carrying something no one else could see: the truth. Real, documented, undeniable truth. One student had uploaded a shaky video, trapped in a janitor's closet, crying as voices on the other side laughed and walked away. All three voices belonged to students from powerful, well-connected families. Another submitted screenshots of a teacher mocking a student's body and family status over a private message. One file was simply a string of journal entries signed only R. It detailed 2 years of mental abuse, isolation, and suicidal thoughts, all from the halls of West Hill. No names, no face, just pain and proof. The more Amara read, the tighter her chest felt, not from fear, from fury. West Hill wasn't just broken. It was a stage built for abuse, and everyone who kept quiet was part of the script. And yet somehow no one had ever burned the script. Until now, she carefully began organizing the files, naming folders by category: faculty, students, digital harassment, physical, emotional. She wasn't planning to go public, not yet. This wasn't about creating chaos. It was about timing, accuracy, exposure when it mattered most. In her final class of the day, Amara sat at the back of the room, laptop closed. Headphones tucked away, her gaze steady, her mind moving faster than ever. To anyone else, she looked like a quiet kid keeping to herself. But behind her calm demeanor was a strategist, a builder, a breaker of cycles. Cole still strutted the halls like he owned them, still performed his dominance as if nothing had changed. But he didn't know what she was holding, didn't see what was coming. The stage hadn't collapsed, but the spotlight was slowly shifting. And Amara, the girl he once hit in the head with a basketball, was now rewriting the play. 3 days later, the ripple began. No one knew who started it, no one knew who first dropped the link. But by third period on Wednesday, the entire school was buzzing about an anonymous post, not on West Hill. Unfiltered, but on the school's official student forum, the one with verified logins, the one everyone actually checked. The post didn't name names, it didn't point fingers. It simply shared a short excerpt from R's journal entries. Beneath it, one line read, "If you've ever felt alone, read this. And if you're the reason someone had to write something like this, maybe it's time to ask who you really are." Within an hour, the post had over 200 views. By the end of the day, more than 1,500 comments, just clicks, just silent, eyes reading behind screens. That kind of silence wasn't ignorance, it was fear. A hallway kind of fear, the kind that spreads faster than gossip. Cole's crew started getting twitchy. Logan was the first to crack. During lunch, he slammed his tray down and barked across the cafeteria. "Who the hell's posting this crap? Trying to drag people through the mud now?" No one answered. Even their usual tag-alongs looked away. At the back of the cafeteria, Amara sat at her usual table, same chair, same posture, quiet watching. She didn't need to post again. One spark was enough. The rest group psychology would do the rest of the burning. Later during homeroom, the teacher walked in with a stiff face and a voice that warned of fallout. "We don't know who posted that message, but the administration is looking into it." Glances darted across the room. Not at Amara, at each other. No one spoke, but something subtle shifted. Eyes began to meet hers, not with pity, not with mockery, but something else, a quiet recognition. A guy in the front row, hair messy, hoodie, too big, caught her eye and gave a barely there nod, hand brushing his chest like a silent thank you. Amara nodded back. Just once, that was all it took to know. The dominoes are falling. No need to shove, just let them tip. That afternoon, while leaving school a senior, someone she'd never spoken to slipped a folded note into her hand. No words, just emotion, fast and discreet. She opened it once she was alone. Inside, "Thank you. That story you posted was mine. She stopped walking. For the first time in weeks, her throat tightened, not from sadness, but from something else, something unnamed, the kind of feeling you get when you realize you've opened a door for someone, not with power, not with noise, but with truth. On the way home, she didn't head straight back. She took a detour toward the back of the school to the empty basketball court. She stood at the edge watching the metal hoop sway gently in the wind under the fading light. 3 weeks ago, this was where a basketball had slammed into her skull, and today every blow she took was starting to come back around. She didn't have to lift a hand. The damage was already done. By Friday morning, West Hill didn't feel the same, not because of any big announcement, no suspensions, no assemblies, no police cars outside, but something was undeniably different. The halls still lit up, students still moved, teachers still taught, but the loudest voices, the ones who used to laugh the hardest, suddenly weren't so loud. Cole no longer sat in the center of the cafeteria like a king on his throne. His seat was still there, but he arrived later than usual. Ate quicker, said nothing, smiled even less. Logan kept his headphones on the entire day, avoided eye contact. Drew, the one who laughed at everything, was caught in a blurry photo. Someone posted to a shared group chat. The caption read, "This guy's been mentioned in 3 different reports." Just saying, no one knew if it was true. No one asked, because at West Hill, one sentence was enough to flip the narrative. Amara didn't do anything different. She walked the same halls, took the same notes, sat at the same desk. But this time when she walked into class, Jenna, the same girl who had once looked away, pulled out a chair beside her, didn't say a word, just looked up, smiled, and Amara smiled back. No apology was exchanged, none was needed. Because sometimes forgiveness doesn't come through words. Sometimes it's just in the quiet act of choosing to stand beside someone instead of stepping away later, as students packed up for the day. Mr. Kessler, the history teacher, stopped Amara at the door. He didn't say much, just looked at her for a moment and then said, "If you ever need someone to listen, I'm here. Not as a teacher, just as an adult who knows when he's stayed quiet too long." Amara nodded. Didn't speak, but inside that meant more to her than any official award ever could. That night, she sat in her room, laptop open. The anonymous folder was still active, but now something new had appeared. Not from a student, from an unknown sender. She clicked. It was an audio file. A woman's voice, shaky but adult. The recording captured a conversation between 2 teachers, Miss Raymond and Coach Beck. They were discussing Amara, talking about removing her from gym temporarily because of the chaos she was stirring. They chuckled. Agreed she was better off staying quiet. Amara didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She downloaded the file, renamed it Staff Complicit 01 MP3. Then she shut the laptop, walked to the window, opened it. Cold air poured in, brushing past her face, lifting her curls slightly. The city lights flickered beyond the trees. West Hill was still standing, but the foundation had cracked. And she knew one more push at the right time in the right place and it would all come down. And this time she wouldn't need to throw the ball. The truth would do it for her Monday. A new week, Amara walked into West Hill with a light backpack and a heavy stare. Not because she was tired, because she was carrying something no one else could see. Dangling from the zipper of her bag was a tiny USB drive on it, over 40 files, voice recordings, photos, screenshots, transcripts, enough to hold a public tribunal if she wanted. But she wasn't here to start a war. She was here to let the system collapse under its own weight. The first move wasn't against Cole, it was against one of the enablers, Raymond, the gym teacher, who had stood by while Amara was left out on the field like discarded gear. During morning PE, while the class was out running drills, Amara hung back, fell behind on purpose. She pulled out her phone, queued up the audio clip, Raymond and Beck speaking casually about getting Amara out of the group. As Ms. Raymond walked past, Amara hit play, just loud enough for one person to hear. Kick her out of the group, she's just causing trouble. If she knew her place, she'd stay quiet. Raymond froze mid-step. Looked around, no one else noticed, just Amara, staring at her, calm, silent, smiling. Not a threat, just the quiet look of someone who knew way more than they were saying. Ms. Raymond didn't respond, but by lunch, Amara noticed she wasn't leading class anymore. A student assistant had taken her place, and from the next day forward, Amara was back in the group. No forms, no complaints, just timing and truth. The second strike landed a day later. The school's digital announcement board, normally reserved for event schedules and morning greetings, flashed with something new. Have you ever witnessed or experienced bullying or discrimination at West Hill? Yes. No. Prefer not to say. There was no source, no author, no IP to trace. But within one lunch period, 230 students clicked. Yes, the administration took it down after 45 minutes, but it didn't matter. The data had already been backed up automatically into a secondary server Amara had prepped last week. Now, she didn't just have testimonies. She had numbers, and no one could argue with numbers. By lunchtime, Cole walked into the cafeteria. No cheers, no waves, his table empty. He looked around. People whispered, avoided his gaze. He walked toward Amara's table. But before he could speak, she looked up. Just 2 seconds. No anger, no fear, just dismissal. The look you give someone who's become background noise in a painting you're still painting, and in that moment he knew the game he started wasn't his anymore. Wednesday morning, without warning, every student at West Hill received the same email through the school's internal system. The sender, anonymous subject line. Truth might not save you, but it'll make bullies tremble. The body of the email had no message. Just one link, a short, clean PDF, 7 pages. Page 1, a transcript from a recorded conversation between a teacher and a bullied student. The teacher said, "You can't keep blaming others. Maybe you should learn to tolerate things better." Page 2, a screenshot of a group chat, students mocking a girl's body, her clothes, her face. Several of the names in the chat belonged to current club leaders, the Golden Kids. And just like that, each page cut deeper. No names revealed, no accusations shouted, but the content was precise, calculated, unemotional. That's what made it powerful. Within 2 class periods, the teacher's lounge was filled with whispers. The administration called an emergency meeting. The student council, normally a place to argue over prom colors and vending machine choices, was pulled into a closed-door session. Meanwhile, in the courtyard, the once invisible students walked with their chins up. Not because they were stronger, but because now they knew they weren't alone. Amara passed Cole in the hallway. Didn't flinch, didn't sidestep. He looked at her, not with smugness or hate, but something else. Uncertainty, like he was facing something he couldn't calculate. And he was, because Amara wasn't the only one pulling strings anymore. On the student bulletin board, a plain white sheet of paper had been pinned up. No title, no flashy fonts, just a handwritten line. "I am one of them. I've been humiliated. I stayed silent. Not anymore." Below it, someone had drawn a small circle with a dot in the middle. By the end of the day, 12 more circles had been added, each in different handwriting. No names, no removal, no one dared, because this wasn't online. This was real, tangible, undeniable. In English class, Amara sat at the back, eyes on the window. She didn't need to post again, didn't need to say a word. All she had to do was wait. Because once the ones in power lose control of the story begins to rewrite itself. And she didn't need to be the hero. She just had to be the one still standing at the end. Thursday morning, a color printout appeared on the teacher's lounge bulletin board. No name, no logo, just a bold title. A question for the adults at West Hill. If your students are afraid of you, who do they turn to? Beneath it was a screenshot, an exchange between a student and a teacher. The student asking for help after being threatened. The teacher's reply: "I don't want to get involved. That would only make things worse." No one claimed it, but everyone knew it hit a nerve. By lunch, the principal had called an emergency staff meeting, ordering that all unverified content be taken down immediately. But by the end of the day, 6 more anonymous flyers appeared across the school in Building B. The gym, the library, even the music room. Each one delivered something simple, a sentence, a screenshot, a piece of pain. I spoke up. They transferred me. I didn't cry because I was weak. I cried because I was alone. Don't ask why students stay silent. Ask why they don't trust you. No one touched them. A teacher tried to tear one down only to have a student stand up and repost another one in its place. For the first time in years, the halls of West Hill weren't controlled by authority but by truth. Cole snapped. During break, he slammed his locker shut so hard it echoed down the hallway. He shouted, "Enough! What the hell do you people want? You want to burn this place down?" No one answered, but phones went up. A live stream, a camera, a new narrator. He saw them too late. He realized he wasn't in charge of the story anymore. Across the building, Amara stood at the end of the hall, watching it all unfold. No smirk, no satisfaction. Just a slow, deliberate nod when his eyes found hers. Finally, she thought the mask slips. She turned away. In the pocket of her hoodie was a small object, a micro SD card on it, a recording from Monday. Inside the gym, When Cole thought no one was around, his voice sharp. "Cold, you think you're smarter than me. We'll see who's still standing when this is over." She hadn't responded then, but today she knew his time was running out. The anonymous flyers kept spreading. No leader, no name, but everyone knew this wasn't a campaign. This was consequence. Amara didn't need to fuel the fire. The spark had caught. The air itself carried it forward. Back in class, she opened her notebook to a new page and wrote a single line. He's yelling because he knows he's losing, and he's yelling to drown out the sound of himself breaking Friday. It should have been just one more step, one final push, and the whole thing would fall apart. But it didn't. As Amara walked through the school gates, a new notification popped up on the student app. Urgent, effective immediately. Any unverified material circulated on school grounds will be subject to disciplinary action. All digital devices involved are subject to confiscation for investigation. Below it, in cold formal text, in accordance with West Hill administration and district policy. She stopped walking. Not from fear, but because this strike didn't come from Cole, it came from above. Around her, students whispered. Some glanced at her. Phones were pulled out. Posts were deleted. Flyers quietly disappeared. No one said anything, but fear had returned. Fast, sharp, organized. In homeroom, the teacher walked in late, avoided eye contact. Set a stack of forms on the desk and said flatly, "You'll sign this. It confirms you will not distribute or store any anonymous material at school. If you don't, you'll be temporarily suspended." A student in the front row stood. "What if it's the truth?" The teacher paused, then muttered, "It's policy." That's all. Amara didn't sign. Neither did 7 others. By the end of the day, they were all called into the admin office. At lunch, Cole sat back down in his usual seat, middle of the cafeteria. He didn't say much, but as he walked past Amara's table, he leaned in just close enough and said under his breath, "See your little justice crusade, fragile as hell." She didn't answer, but she knew the game had shifted. This wasn't just about students anymore. This was about power, institutional power. And it had finally noticed her that afternoon in a small office behind a closed door. Amara sat in front of the vice principal. "We need to review your laptop," he said. "I decline," Amara replied. Calm, direct. "You could be disrupting the academic environment." She held his gaze. "No, I'm reminding everyone that school isn't a place where silence is the only safe option." The air in the room went still. That night back home, Amara sat staring at her screen. A message from R popped up. "They called my parents. I'm probably getting suspended." Another one from a student she barely knew. "Are you still going?" "I'm scared. I don't want to get caught in it." She stared at the blinking cursor. Her fingers hovered. This wasn't a student movement anymore. This was a war of narratives, and now the system was fighting back. She opened her notebook. Wrote one line, "If they're threatening me, it means I hit the nerve." She didn't back down. She just tightened the straps of her backpack and waited. Monday. The West Hill Assembly Hall had been rebranded for the day. The event was called Student Voices, Rebuilding a Positive Environment. 3 days after Amara refused to hand over her laptop, 2 days after R was suspended, 1 day after the student forum was completely locked down, Amara had been invited to speak. Not because the school wanted to hear her, but because they thought she'd fold. Play nice. Say something soft. What they forgot was simple. When you hand a mic to someone who's been silenced too long, they don't whisper. The room was packed. Faculty, administration, a few parent reps, over 300 students. The air was tight with tension. Some expected her to be scared. Some expected fire. She looked at no one. Just stepped up to the mic. "Weak, I got hit in the head with a basketball." No one said a word. No one asked if I was okay. I don't blame them. They were scared. Just like I used to be. Silence. Every sentence felt like a pin pulled from a grenade. I realized something. At this school, silence isn't ignorance, it's survival. We don't have a safe learning environment. We have a place where telling the truth gets you sent to the office. Eyes darted. Heads turned. A teacher stiffened. The vice principal scribbled something quickly on a notepad. "You called what I did disruption, but I didn't break doors. I didn't threaten anyone. All I did was open one and let the truth walk through." A single clap, then a few more. Then a cluster of students stood. No shouting, no chanting, just clear, deliberate applause. Amara paused. She could have stopped there, but instead she leaned forward and finished. "I don't need anyone to fight for me. I just need the next kid who gets pushed into a corner to know they're not the first to stand up. And they sure won't be the last. She stepped down. The room didn't explode. It didn't need to. But every eye stayed locked on her, like the silence was listening this time. That evening, the video of her speech spread like wildfire. She didn't post it. Someone else did. Within 12 hours, over 6,000 views, hundreds of comments. One message stood out from a scrambled, unknown email address. "Kid, you just made it impossible for them to control the narrative anymore. Now, they play by your rules Tuesday morning." The front gates of West Hill were busier than usual, not because of an event, but because a couple of local news crews were parked just outside, cameras on standby. Some students whispered, "They're here because of Amar's speech." A black SUV pulled up. A man stepped out, not in a suit but sharp enough to signal importance. A few teachers went out to greet him. Amara stood at a distance, watching. She recognized him instantly, a media representative from her uncle's office, Senator Marcus Lewis. She wasn't surprised. She didn't react, just tightened her grip on her bag and walked past. As she did, the man nodded and said quietly, "You're making waves, just don't let them carry you away." First period, a teacher announced that district officials would be visiting and asked everyone to maintain cooperation and positive engagement. But what really threw Amara off wasn't the visit. It was Jenna, the girl who once smiled from the sidelines, then stood beside her, was now featured on the front page of the school's student newsletter. Jenna M., the face of change at West Hill. There she was, picture perfect. Mid-speech, a quote right beneath the photo. A quote Amara knew word for word. Because she said it, there was no citation. No mention of who really said it first. No credit, just polished rebranding. Amara didn't get angry, but she felt something sharper. Something colder than rage, the quiet sting of being used. She said nothing. Didn't post, didn't react, but someone else did. An anonymous comment under the digital article read, "I was there, that line wasn't hers. We all know who said it." That comment racked up over 300 likes. A few hours later, the article disappeared. No correction, no explanation. Just gone. That night, her uncle messaged her. "Let me know if you need anything. The media's watching. This is a chance to get your voice even further. Don't let someone else take the spotlight for what you've done." She read the message, didn't reply. Her real question wasn't whether to speak up. It was deeper. Harder. If my name ends up everywhere, is this still about the truth or about me? She closed her laptop, walked out to the balcony. The night air was cold, sharp. Above her, the office light in the principal's building still burned. She knew they were meeting planning, calculating, because even now they understood. No system stays quiet when a 16-year-old starts holding the mic too long. Wednesday morning, Amara was called to the principal's office. Not for discipline, they said, but for a private discussion. She knew what that meant. Polite on the outside, strategic underneath. Inside the room, 3 people waited. The principal, Ms. Raymond, the gym teacher, who once turned her back, and a man in a gray dress shirt wearing a school media badge. She sat down, calm, still ready. "We've been following the response from the community," the principal began, voice as smooth as a rug laid before a fall. "And we believe," the media man continued, "that with the right framing, this can be a powerful, positive example." He handed her a glossy packet. "We'd like to invite you to be the face of our new campaign. West Hill Speaks No More Silence. There'll be talks, press coverage, even a documentary. Of course, there'd be scholarship support, media guidance for your future. Everything was said with kindness, clean, controlled." It chilled her more than any insult ever could. Amara didn't reach for the paper. She just looked up. "If I say yes, who decides what I say?" They paused. The media rep gave a polished smile. "We'd work together to align the messaging, so it supports the school's positive direction." She understood. This wasn't an offer, it was a redesign. They wanted to turn a raw story into a PR-approved narrative with her as the repackaged mascot. "I don't need scholarships to speak. And I don't need a camera crew to be heard," she said quietly. "What I need is for students who've stayed quiet to be allowed to speak without someone else handing them a script." She stood, moved to the door, then turned back once. "And if anyone's still too scared to speak, I'll speak for them. But it won't be with your talking points." That afternoon, a new paper appeared on the student board. Not just a sentence, this time a paragraph. "I've been asked to cooperate, to share my story in a way others find comfortable. But if truth has to be edited before it's allowed, it's not truth anymore." No signature, But the final line was unmistakably hers. "I won't be a symbol. I'll stay human." Friday. 15 minutes before the final bell, Amara was called to the office again, but not the principal's. This time the student counseling office, a room usually reserved for transfer paperwork, withdrawals, or quiet suspensions. Waiting for her was a young woman in a beige sweater with the soft tone of someone trained to say no with a smile. "Amara, we'd like to talk about what might be a better fit for your continued learning." Amara didn't answer, just looked straight ahead. The administration feels that given everything, West Hill may no longer align with your personal growth path. She understood this wasn't a conversation. It was a calculated push wrapped in politeness, a voluntary withdrawal form. Say yes, and it all goes away quietly. If you agree to transfer, we'll handle everything, even provide a letter for scholarships if needed. Still polite, still packaged like a favor. Amara gave a small smile. Cold controlled. "I get it, I'm the problem." And problems get erased. The counselor shook her head, maintaining the same neutral voice. "No one said you're the problem, Amara. We just think you'd thrive better elsewhere." Amara stood. "No goodbye, no thank you. I don't need a better school. I need this one to get better. Not for me, for the ones coming next." That evening back home, a sealed envelope sat on the table, West Hill High official letterhead, inside notice of recommended transfer, in order to ensure the student's well-being and the continued stability of the learning environment. At the bottom, this is not a mandatory action. However, if we do not receive a response within 3 days, we will begin contacting alternative schools. Amara didn't open it again. She took a photo, posted it on the now revived internal forum. No caption. No commentary, just one line. "This is how they say, we're not kicking you out, but you should probably leave." The post hit 3,000 views in 2 hours, over 200 comments. Most said, "You're not leaving. If they try to push you out, we'll speak up. The more they push, the more we see." You're right, for the first time in weeks, Amara didn't need to write anything else. The story wasn't hers alone anymore. In her notebook, she wrote one sentence: "If they try to erase me from the page, I'll just print the book myself Monday." A new week began at West Hill with a heavy silence. No protests, no outbursts, no official statements, but something had shifted. No one laughed too loudly in the cafeteria anymore. The cheap jokes had disappeared. The eyes that once avoided Amara now looked at her differently. Not like she was the problem, but like she was the first person who dared to ask what the problem really was. Her Friday night post still sat online, spreading to student groups and other schools. Even former West Hill students were messaging her. One said, "If you need a past witness, I'm here." Another, "They kicked me out in 2017 for the same reason." But the real surprise came during first period English. The teacher, the same one who once ignored Amara's raised hand, walked in and said, "This week's essay topic, a moment you had to choose between silence and truth." No one said it aloud, but everyone knew why that prompt existed. No one complained. They just put their heads down and wrote. Jenna, the same girl who once quoted Amara without credit, quietly slipped a folded note onto her desk. Amara opened it. No apology, just one line. "That quote wasn't mine." I know that Amara didn't respond, but she folded the note and tucked it into her notebook, not as evidence, but as a memory. At lunch in the faculty meeting room, the principal opened an email from the State Department of Education. They were launching an independent assessment of school climate, following public complaints, parent letters, and media attention. They requested discipline records, policy documents, and a copy of Amara's speech. At the same time, in a quiet corner of the library, Amara sat alone. On her laptop was a draft of a report she'd started, meant not for the school, not for her senator uncle, but for a national student rights forum. She wasn't writing to be recognized. She was writing for some kid, somewhere, who might find that document and realize, "I'm not crazy, I'm not alone, I'm just caught in a system that got too good at pretending." She stayed until the library lights blinked off. Before leaving, she typed one last line at the bottom of the page. "I'm not asking anyone to change. I just want them to stop pretending nothing's wrong." Tuesday afternoon, in an empty classroom near the art wing, a small group of students gathered quietly. No roll call, no logos, no banners, just a few plastic chairs, a whiteboard, and one handwritten message across it. "If you need to speak, speak. If you need to listen, listen." At first, there were 6 of them, then 12. Six of them, then nearly 20. There was no moderator, no speeches, no leader. A girl with short hair was the first to speak. Last year, someone secretly filmed me changing into the locker room. I reported it. A teacher told me, don't make it a big deal. No one interrupted, no one recorded. They just listened. A boy followed. I watched my friend get mocked for being gay. I didn't say anything, and now I can't sleep at night. One by one, slowly, they let go of pieces they'd kept buried for years. Amara didn't speak. She sat in the back, leaning against the wall, eyes tracing the ceiling, but her heart was racing not out of fear, but because, for the first time, these voices didn't need her to start the fire. They lit themselves, and it was more powerful than any speech she'd ever given. After school, a teacher walked in, Mr. Kessler, the history teacher. He looked around the room, then simply said, "If you all need a quieter space, I'll request the upstairs reading room." He didn't ask who organized it, he didn't report it, he didn't take notes, he just offered space. Amara stood, walked past him, said, "Thank you for not asking too many questions," and he replied, "Thank you for not waiting for permission." That night, Amara's anonymous inbox held nearly 40 new messages. No one asked for help, no one sent evidence, just stories. Small ones, big ones, ones that seemed invisible. Someone said their best friend turned on them after a rumor. Someone said a teacher judged them for their accent. Someone wrote just one line. "This is the first time I've ever typed this out." She didn't respond to them all, just saved them, and before shutting her laptop for the night, she added one more sentence to the draft she'd been working on. "I never wanted to be a hero. I just wanted to be the reason someone thinks, if she did it, maybe I can try too." Thursday. An internal notice was sent to all West Hill staff. The State Department of Education will be conducting an on-site climate audit next week. Please prepare individual evaluations and recent student disciplinary records. No one said it aloud, but everyone knew this was the ripple effect of the speech, the post, the silence that no longer worked. During class, Amara was called to the office again, but this time there was no threat, no warning letter, no polished PR pitch, just the principal. And one chair across from his desk. On the table was a printed copy of Amara's recent forum post, the one where she refused to be turned into a symbol. He looked at her for a long time before speaking. "I've worked in education for nearly 30 years. I've never seen a student cause this much reaction without breaking things, without shouting, without disrupting." Amara didn't respond, but she understood this wasn't an apology. It was a quiet recognition. "I'm not going to ask you to stop," he continued. "That doesn't work anymore, but I will ask you to be careful not to become what you stood against." She paused, really thought about it, then asked, "What do you think I've become?" He shook his head. "I think you're still a student, and that's more powerful than you realize." As she left the room, Amara didn't feel victorious. There was no rush, no swelling, soundtrack in her head. Just calm. The kind that comes when you stop waiting for someone to fix what they broke, and you fix what you can instead. That afternoon, she returned to the open share circle by the art room. More people showed up this time, some sat on the floor. A parent took a seat in the back, quietly jotting notes. No one led, no one gave speeches. But when Amara entered, all eyes turned, not waiting for her to speak, but as if to say, "We're here not for you, but because of what you started," and she got it. She wasn't the spark anymore. She was the ember, steady and warm, so others could light their own fires of Friday. Rain. Not heavy, just enough to smear the pavement and make footsteps echo louder through the halls. Amara walked past the rows of classrooms, not stared at like her first week, not avoided like the weeks after. Now people looked at her like she belonged, not as a symbol, not as a disruptor, but as someone who simply existed here on her own terms. The final class of the week ended with a voice on the loudspeaker. The State Department of Education will officially visit West Hill on Monday. Students may register to speak during the open forum. No one turned to Amara, but everyone knew that visit wasn't happening because of a letter. It was happening because a 16-year-old black girl refused to walk away. When the dismissal bell rang, Amara didn't head home. She walked around the back of the school to where the same basketball hoop still stood. She stood under the light drizzle, staring up at the metal rim, remembering the first time a ball struck her in the head. Not because it hurt, but because that throw, that moment, was the beginning of the end behind her footsteps. A voice, if this were a movie, the background music would probably kick in. Right now, she turned. Jenna stood there, hands in her jacket, hair damp from the rain. Amara smiled. Didn't say a word. Jenna walked closer, gently tossed a basketball into Amara's hands. I never thanked you, Jenna said. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have stood up. Amara shook her head. You stood because you chose to. I was just the first one hit. They both laughed. The rain kept falling. No music, no applause, no big Hollywood ending. But one thing was certain tomorrow. Amara would show up at this school again. Same backpack, same notebook pages filled with truth. Same quiet conviction that no longer needed approval. She didn't change the world, but she changed how people looked at a girl who dared to say, this isn't okay. And sometimes that's enough.